All right, everybody. Today we are going to talk about the male reproductive system. We are going to describe the scrotum, testes, and the penis. And we are going to talk about the pathway taken by a sperm cell from its formation to ejaculation. And we're going to name all the passages that it travels through. We are going to state the names, the locations, and the functions of the male accessory reproductive glands. Okay, so lots to cover today. So, first we're going to talk about the scrotum. And this is considered external genitalia, okay? And that includes the scrotum and the penis. And the scrotum is in an area that we call the perineum. And this is a diamond-shaped area between the thighs. It is bordered by the pubic symphysis, the ischial tuberosities, and the coccyx. Okay, so it's like a triangle between the thighs. The scrotum itself is a pouch of skin, muscle, and fibrous connective tissue that contains the testis, or testes, right? And it is literally just a sack of skin. So the left testicle usually descends lower than the right, and that is because our bodies, male bodies, that is beneficial because we don't want the testicles compressed against each other. So one usually hangs a little bit lower. The skin here of the scrotum has sebaceous glands, sparse hair, rich sensory innervation, and a somewhat darker pigmentation of the skin. It's a little darker than the skin found elsewhere on the body. There is the internal median septum, which divides the scrotum into the right and the left components. And there is a perineal raphe, and that is the medial seam that is located on the scrotum, extending anteriorly along the ventral side of the penis and posteriorly to the anus. The spermatic cord is a bundle of fibrous connective tissue containing the ductus deferens and blood and lymphatic vessels, along with the testicular nerve. It continues through 4 centimeters of the inguinal canal into the pelvic cavity. And there are 2 inguinal rings, the external and the interior. The exterior is inferior to the entrance of the inguinal canal. The internal ring is superior at the exit to the pelvic cavity. The testes reside in this scrotum because they need a cooler environment than they would receive if they were inside the body. So basically, sperm wants to be produced at a lower temperature than 37 degrees Celsius, which is what the body temperature is. So literally the scrotum is just a sac holding the testes outside of the body cavity so that sperm can be produced there and be, vital working sperm. If the temperature is too warm, that isn't a good environment to make sperm. So literally, it's an area, it's a sac that is housing the testicles, which we're going to find out is where the sperm is made. Okay? So, the scrotum can regulate temperature of the testes in 3 different ways. So there is what's called the cremaster muscle. And this is strips of the internal abdominal oblique muscle. And it basically is a mesh of the spermatic cord. And in cold temperatures, it can contract and draw the testes upward towards the body so that the testicles would get warmed. Or in warm temperatures, it can relax and literally suspend the testes further away from the body, therefore cooling off the testicles. There is also what's called a dartos muscle. This is a subcutaneous layer of smooth muscle, and it contracts when cold, which then wrinkles the scrotum, holding the testes against the warm body, again, so to raise the temperature of the testicles. And it also then reduces both the surface area of the scrotum and any heat loss. So both of these muscles are basically working to control where the testicles are in relation to their temperature. If they are too cool, they would be pulled closer to the body to warm up. And if they are too warm, they would be dropped down away from the body to cool off. And then there is what is called the panpineiform plexus. And this is an extensive network of veins from the testes that surrounds the testicular artery and the spermatic cord. And here we find what's called a countercurrent heat exchanger. So without this plexus, the warm arterial blood would heat the testes and inhibit the sperm production. But because of this countercurrent heat exchanging system in this plexus, the body is able to remove heat from the descending arterial blood. And that means by the time it reaches the testes, the blood is actually 1.5 to 2.5 degrees Celsius cooler than the body temperature blood. That's amazing. So again, that is going to play a role in keeping the testicles cooler and then allowing for sperm production. All right. Then we have the actual testes, or the testicles. Okay? And they are a combined endo and exocrine gland. And they produce sex hormones and sperm. They are oval and slightly flattened. They are about 4 centimeters long and about 2.5 centimeters in diameter. And they are covered anteriorly and laterally by tunica vaginalis. There is also what's called tunica albuginea, and this is a white fibrous capsule that surrounds the testes. The connective tissue septa divides the testes into about 250 to 300 wedge-shaped lobules. So they are broken down even within the individual testes, the sections, if you will. Okay. There are things called the seminiferous tubules. There are 1 to 3 in each lobule. Each tubule is lined with a thick germinal epithelium for sperm generation. So this is where sperm are actually being grown. And then you have what are called interstitial or Leydig cells between the tubules that produce testosterone. And that is a sex hormone. You also have sestendicular cells or Sertoli cells in between the germ cells. And these protect the germ cells and promote their development. Germ cells depend on them for nutrients, waste removal, growth factors, and other needs. So sometimes these testicular or Sertoli cells are also called nurse cells because they're almost nursing the germ cells. There is what is called the BTB, the blood-testis barrier. And this is formed by tight junctions between the testicular cells. And this separates the sperm from the immune system. And it prevents antibodies and other large molecules in the blood from getting into the germ cells. because the germ cells are immunologically different from the body cells, and they would be attacked almost as a foreign invader by the immune system. So we have this barrier that prevents basically the body cells or antibodies or these things who might not like these germ cells from getting in and literally destroying them. The rete testis is a network of that is embedded in the capsule on the posterior side of the testis that collects sperm from the seminiferous tubules. They then move with the flow of fluid secreted by the testicular cells. Sperm do not actually swim while they are within the male reproductive tract. That happens later. And then there is a testicular artery that supplies each testis. And that basically, there is a low blood pressure of the testicular artery, which results in poor oxygen supply to the testes. Therefore, sperm actually develop very large mitochondria, which you remember is an organelle within the cell that produces ATP. Remember, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. And they produce a large number of these because it helps them survive this hypoxic environment of the female reproductive tract. The blood leaves the testes through that pampiniform plexus that we talked about, with coverage to form the testicular veins. The right testicular vein drains into the inferior vena cava, and the left one drains into the left renal vein. There are testicular nerves from the spinal cord, and they are T10 and T11. And they carry sensory fibers concerned with pain and motor fibers regulating blood flow. The testicles are very sensitive, right? If injured, it is very painful, and that is because they are innervated with nerves. Then we have the spermatic ducts. These are ducts from the testes to the urethra. There are efferent ductules, about 12 small ciliated ducts collecting sperm from the rete testis and transporting it to the epididymis. Then you have the duct of the epididymis, which includes a head, body, and tail. And this is where the sperm matures and is stored. And sperm is fertile for about 40 to 60 days. It contains a single coiled duct that is about 6 meters long, adhering to the posterior of the testis. Sperm mature as they travel through the duct. If they are not ejaculated, they disintegrate and the epididymis reabsorbs them. Because, as we said, they kind of have like a shelf life. They're only fertile for 40 to 60 days. So if they aren't used in time, they are just basically reabsorbed by the body. There is a ductus or vas deferens. This is a muscular tube about 45 centimeters long, passing up from scrotum through the inguinal canal to a posterior surface of the bladder. The duct widens behind the bladder and widens into what's called the terminal ampulla. The duct ends by uniting with the duct of the seminal vesicle. There is a thick wall of smooth muscle that is well innervated by sympathetic nerve fibers. And then you have the ejaculatory duct. This is a 2 centimeter duct formed from the ductus deferens and seminal vesicle that passes through the prostate to empty into the urethra. Three sets of glands in the male reproductive system make up what we call accessory glands. The first are the seminal vesicles. This is a pair of glands that lie posterior to the bladder, and they empty into the ejaculatory duct, and they form about 60% of semen. Then we have the prostate gland. And this surrounds the urethra and the ejaculatory duct just inferior to the bladder. It is a compound of 30 to 50 tubular acinar glands. It empties through about 20 pores in the prostatic urethra, and it is a thin, milky secretion that forms about 30% of the semen. And then there is the bulbourethral gland, sometimes called the Cowper gland, which is near the bulb of the penis. And during sexual arousal, these glands produce a clear, slippery fluid that lubricates the head of the penis in preparation for intercourse. It also protects the sperm by neutralizing the acidity of residual urine that might be in the urethra. Since we just talked about the prostate, I want to just mention that there are obviously prostate diseases. One we encounter is BPH, which is benign prostatic hyperplasia. This is a non-cancerous enlargement of the prostate. It compresses the urethra and obstructs flow of urine. It promotes the bladder and kidney infections. Then, as you know, you've probably heard of, there is something called prostate cancer. This is the second most common cancer in men after lung cancer. Tumors tend to be near the periphery of the gland where they do not obstruct urine flow. But if they go unnoticed, which they usually do, they can start to cause pain. They sometimes then can metastasize into the nearby lymph nodes and into the lungs and other organs, which basically means it would then spread the cancer throughout the body. It can be detected through a digital rectal exam, which is a palpation through the rectal wall to check for tumors. And sometimes it can be diagnosed by different levels of serine protease or acid phosphatase within a person's blood. And then we have the penis. The penis serves to deposit semen into the vagina. Half of the penis is an internal root, and half is the externally visible shaft. The external portion is about 4 inches long when flaccid or non-erect, and 5 to 7 inches long when erect. The skin over the shaft is loosely attached so to allow for basically expansion. It extends over the glans as the prepuce or the foreskin, which is sometimes removed by circumcision. And a semengma is a waxy secretion produced by the sebaceous glands in the glans and facing surface of the prepuce. There are 3 cylindrical bodies of erectile tissue, which fill with blood during sexual arousal and account for the enlargement of the penis, or what we call an erection. There is a single corpus spongiosum along the ventral side of the penis. It encloses the spongy penile urethra. The distal end enlarges and forms the gland's penis. The proximal end ends as a dilated bulb ensheathed by the bulbosponginosus muscle. Then there are two corpora cavernosa tissues that diverge like arms of a Y. Each arm is called a crus and attaches the penis to the pubic arch. And it is covered with an ischiocavernosus muscle. That is a long word. The three cylinders of erectile tissue are spongy. They contain many blood sinuses called lacunae and trabeculae, which are partitions in between the lacunae. And that, folks, brings us to the end of our first lecture, starting the reproductive system, which was the male reproductive system. Lots of new stuff there, probably, lots of new terms. Please let me know if you have any questions, and have a wonderful day. Take care.